That is the sun right next to all the detail of cables and a mast and everything you'd want. No penalty. There it is. What a result. I can't say it more unequivocally than what we're all seeing here with our own eyes. G'day everybody, how you going today? It is so good to see you. I do hope that you are super well. I have another super duper exciting lens from Nikon to show you here today. The most recently released 600 6.3 prime, and just look at how small it is, and well, it is beguilingly light. 600 mils, there should be more going on here. And this is the power of a Phase Fresnel lens, a PF lens. It has a special element in there that not only allows you to make lighter lenses, but also smaller lenses. And it certainly also helps with aberrations, with purple fringing. Size and weight, absolutely fabulous. Small, and it's just very easy to handle. And I can absolutely feel that the weight is on this end of it, and that all makes sense once we mount it on the camera. We can see here that it has the tripod foot, a collar attached to that. Now this lens is a 6.3 to 32 f-stops, and it is a 95mm filter thread. Minimum focus distance is 13 feet 1 inches or 4 meters. And amazingly, it is only 27.8 centimeters long, just shy of 12 inches. It's not that much bigger. It's only something like 6 or 7 centimeters longer than a 70 to 200. So this is an enormous amount of reach in such a small package. The optical design of this lens is that it has 21 elements in 14 groups. I think another thing that's really interesting about this lens is, well, we just got the 180 to 600, and it's a 6.3, and this is a 600, 6.3. And they're similar sizes, and they're not that different in weight. I think the 180 to 600 is closer to 2 kilograms, so this is 75% of the weight of that. Or that lens is 33% heavier than this lens, 1.5 kilos out to almost 2 kilos. One would have to think same focal length, same aperture, not that different physically. Why would you buy this lens instead of that lens? Why would you do it? And really the only thing that comes to my mind, as I cannot test them side by side, is that this is optically far superior. This lens ships with the gold ring, or is it a yellow ring? The yellow gold ring. And thus it is absolutely considered a Nikon premium lens. The 180 to 600 is not an S-class lens. And of course, there are already a few videos out there that are talking about this. And if you take a look at Rishi Talk's video regarding the 600 PF, he does a comprehensive comparison between the 180 to 600 and the 600 PF, clearly showing that the 600 PF is sharper. And Rishi states that the 600 PF focuses faster than the 180 to 600. He does stress though, considering that the 180 to 600 is significantly cheaper and is not an S-class lens, it is still performing very well. It comes with 5.5 stops of stabilisation.
1400 6.3, 8K handheld 600mm. Bang, that is how fast the focus is, and that is fast. Bang, 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 and that's continuous. I'm not having to press any buttons. In video mode, it just does it. 1000 6.3 ISO 64 600mm handheld.
Who's this lens for? Well, it is for action, birding, wildlife, and of course, like any lens, you can kind of use it for anything. It just comes down to your creative choices. Of course, there are some absolute limits there. It's designed for people who want that sort of reach. They want 600 mils, or they're going to put a teleconverter on it and go out to 840 with the 1.4, or you can even go out to 1200 mils with the 2 times. And as we all know, the Z teleconverters are a whole different level to what we were used to in the past with the F mount. 2 times, well, that's 2 stops. And you know, that starts to become significant.
if you don't have a lot of light. But that is giving you an extraordinary amount of reach with only that extra inch on the end there. And just to have 1200 mils in such a small package. And that's full frame. The 1.4, I think, is the sweet spot. And of course, you're getting out towards 900 mils. And that's before we even include the extra 1.5 times you get on a DX/APS-C crop, which cameras like the Z7, the Z7 II, the Z8 and the Z9 are still offering almost 20 megapixels when you couple this with the 1.4 teleconverter with the DX crop. That's field of view equivalent, of course. I think the way that this lens will work is if you want to push it hard and do some of those things that I'm talking about, DX cropping and adding a teleconverter, it's optically so brilliant to begin with that you can get all of that extra stuff out of it. Now, that is totally possible with the 180 to 600. Don't get me wrong, 100% possible with that lens. And it's basically up to you at that point whether you want to spend the money to have a prime, specialty, extraordinary, great for backpacking and hiking lens. Now, it's not a 600 f4 lens, of course it's not, but 6.3 is only 1 1/3 stops difference, which is pretty astonishing considering the size and weight of this lens. And that's what you're paying for, getting image quality that's probably up there with the 600 f4, but not the size and weight hit. And just over 1 stop of light gathering differential. I think it's pretty cool.
1380 equivalent. Handheld on the 600. .3 ISO 64 1/20th.
Let's pop the lens hood on. There's the lens hood. And of course, we've got the gorgeous Plena here, which I have been absolutely thoroughly enjoying. And I've got a video coming up about the Plena soon because I've been shooting a couple of corporate events with the Plena. And I thought, you know what I'll do? I'll swap out the 70 to 200 zoom and I'll just replace it with the 135 1.8. And I tell you, I've got some interesting things to tell you. All right, back to this guy, because that's what this video is about. There it is there on the Z9. This is, you know, this and the Z8 is obviously the most, yeah, and there you go. There's the balance right there. So this is so nicely balanced that holding this one-handed is just not a drama. Nikon have done a great job of just getting the weight in the right spot and making this totally feasible one-handed. Stabilisation is extraordinary. Speed of focus, we've come to expect fast focus, and that's what we get these days. So on this lens, we have our focus ring. We have a programmable ring further on. We have 4 programmable buttons. This is function 2. We have function 1. The switches we have here are to autofocus and manual focus, and a limiter here that limits us to 10 meters. That's as close as it'll get. We have the memory set button. Otherwise, it's got a lovely build quality to it. Composite, metal, composite, composite. So yeah, look, there are a lot of composites, and as we've talked about before, parts of the Z8 body, the composite is made with carbon fiber nanotubes as part of that composite. So not only is it light, but it's super tough. I would suspect exactly the same sort of thing is going on here. And in the places where it matters, like the tripod foot and collar, and of course the mount, well, we have metal components. And of course, there would be plenty of metal in the interior as well, along with that astonishing glass, including that astonishing PF element.
What we have here is an example of what the out of focus background areas can look like. Of course, we can see this is very much in focus. This is ISO 64 1/25 6.3. Plumage is looking good. That's all looking very sharp. 1/25 handheld, no problem at all. So this is shooting in APS-C. So where we are here is 900mm field of view equivalent, handheld at 1/25th. No problem. If you're shooting wildlife that's not moving, you can get your full 64 ISO, and that's great. Now these guys, I was basically in a nature reserve. These guys were way, way, way up high. They were really a long way above me. You really don't get a sense of how far they are away, but they are a long way away. Again, we're in APS-C crop, and yes, eye detect, bird detect, all those things working spectacularly. I mean, you can just see how sharp. This is, we're past 100%, this is 200%, but you can see how sharp it is right there on that particular bird. They're looking down at me. I think they're going to attack me. They certainly could see me, and the only way I found them is I heard them. This is 100% on an APS-C crop. Bird eye detect working really well, and we can see the quality of this image is sharp. ISO 64, 1/1000th of a second in the midday sunlight. You can absolutely shoot this lens at base ISO during the day, anytime that the sun is on subject. You could push this a little bit further. You could probably go to 1/2000th or something like that. As you can see, this is the file I've just brought up. The shadows are tiny amounts. You've got a lot of wriggle room with this lens when you have sunlight. And of course, you can shoot it after sunlight. That's possible. There's nothing more stressful that we can do to this lens optically than to point it at the sun and see what happens. And from my perspective, and we're shooting here at ISO 64, 1/6500th of a second at 6.3, so wide open for this lens. The water is looking great. The suppression of chromatic aberration and flare is high. And to restate again, this is as dramatic, as traumatic as we can possibly get for a lens. It just sort of can't be much harder than rippling water, because you've got every angle of incidents happening just there in the water. Plus, we're looking straight at the sun. Potentially there's flare, potentially there's all sorts of things that could go on within the lens. And again, this is being reduced to a minimum. Another thing I want to show you here is just the level of detail. These are extraordinarily small wires. This is a 45.7 megapixel file. I am continuing to shoot in HE star as I always do, because I think the differential in quality of files is almost imperceptible, and thus I like saving 40% of my space. For me, who's always trying to create cinematic outcomes, which is all about creating mood and sense of place, you want the extremes of shadow and dark and light, shooting into the sun, silhouettes, all these sorts of things. And to be able to do that, and there's really no penalty here that I can see, and if you can see something, please let me know in the comments below. It just brilliant. Look at that. That's 100%. That level of sharpness, handheld, and here we are with the sun. I'm very impressed optically with this lens. You can see it here again with all of those masts and the quality. I mean, I can't sort of stop looking at how sumptuous all these files are. And this is probably the epitome of, can we look like Miami Vice? Can we look like Baywatch? Can we look like something that Bruckheimer would shoot, that Michael Mann would shoot? Epic cinematic sort of look. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm trying to create. And this lens allows me to do it with no penalty. I mean, here we are, not at 100% because the frame changes, and I like this frame. And that is the sun right next to all the detail of cables and a mast and everything you'd want. No penalty. There it is. What a result. I can't say it more unequivocally than what we're all seeing here with our own eyes. Magic. Just absolute magic. Show me where the chromatic aberration is. I can't see it. We've got wires. We've got masts. This is where this stuff should be happening, and it's not. Unbelievable. It's just an impressive combination of technology, and I talked about in my previous video how excited I get about just technology within itself. We get something like this, what we're looking at right here. I have to just say, it just kind of was impossible at this price point with high-speed still cameras getting 45 megapixels. This stuff, it was not possible before, and it's unbelievable what's achievable. I mean, look at that. You're getting the detail of the wires, the masts, and you are looking at the sun in the same portion of the frame. Mind-blowing. And again, just look at the minimal adjustments on these files. I brought up the shadows ever so slightly, but this is just a classic epic image with none of the real remnants that came when we moved from film to digital. After 20 years, plus a lot of the downsides of digital seem to have been pretty much mitigated with what I suspect is a collection of improvements in optical design, improvements in sensor design, and improvements in the algorithms which process our files in camera, and perhaps even the editing software that we use. Classic, epic, wonderful, exciting, glorious. And another great moody shot. For example, imagine you were watching a Martin Scorsese crime thriller and the mob have just gone out there to secure a drug deal or maybe to leave someone with some concrete boots. This is the sort of shot that you would see in that movie. And this is what I'm aiming for. And this is why I love these moments. And this is why this lens is so cinematic, epic, and powerful. Let alone can you do birding and action. But you can go off and shoot cinema. And you can shoot 8K cinema. And it will look this good. And you can do it for such an affordable price. As we go through these files, you can see that they are very untouched. We're looking at 1600 ISO here in these files. And if we go into 100%, we can still see at 1600 ISO, that's looking great and hanging together just fine. I want you to look up here at the time, which is just below the orange line here. Sunset was at 8:45, so we're 20 minutes after sunset here, and we are still getting these magnificent images. Epic, cinematic. You might not be a birder, you might not do action, you might want to shoot a documentary, and this lens performs.
Okay, well, you saw the images, you saw the video. I shoot all sorts of things with these lenses. From my perspective, as I've said many times before, all lenses are for all usages. So it's not just for action, sports and wildlife. Certainly those users will love this lens for the size and the weight. And yes, it's a 6.3. As I said before, that is only 1 1/3 stops from f4, and a 600 f4, well, that is best in class, and those lenses cost $10,000 to $15,000, if not more. US dollars, this is $4,799 US dollars. It's a lot of lens for the price, and it's really exciting, really interesting that Nikon have now got the S-Class compact light, 400, 600 and 800, all in the range, all out now. And then you can buy the premium 400 and the premium 600. Will there be a premium 800? Who knows? I suppose, based on a pattern that's forming, and there does often seem to be patterns, there's a good chance we might get a premium 800. Although, I do wonder how necessary they are in this day and age. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. Would you like to see an 800 5.6? Is that necessary with the amazing teleconverters? And the fact that, and let's keep in mind that the 600 f4 S-Class Z lens has a built-in teleconverter now, which somewhat mitigates, because of course some people might want to have a teleconverter in an 800 and then go out further with the 800. I get it. Anyway, enough speculation on whether there'll be an 800. I certainly think there'd be some people that would like it and would buy it. But I think of all the beautiful tele lenses that the tele primes that we now have, I think that would be the last to come out. And strangely enough, if it comes out, it will be the last of the ranges of super duper tele primes. 400, 600, 800 in the small style, and we've got the 400 and the 600 in the super duper built-in tele versions. All right, well, there it is. There's our first look at the 600 PF. I look forward to showing you more very soon. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Is this a lens that you're interested in? Might you buy it? Love to know. Or will you stick with the 180 to 600, which, as we discussed, has a lot in common with this prime here at the long end. And it might simply come down to differences in focus speed, differences in image quality. So good to see you. If this is your first time here, I would love to see you again. So please do subscribe, please share, and please like. Alrighty, bye for now.
We are with the equivalent of the post credit sequence, and this is the moon shot in APS-C. We'll go into 100%. This is handheld ISO 64 just before sunset, about half an hour or so before sunset. 1/640th 600mm, and I just think this rendition looks absolutely fantastic. What I love about this image is we are looking directly into the sun. This is a full 45 megapixel file. We've got fishing line rendered, and we've got hairs on arms rendered looking into the sun. I mean, what more can you ask for? And then here, buildings that are something like 3 or 4 kilometers away, 100%, just rendered beautifully up into the corner. And there's no reason for this not to be because we're so far away. But another thing that's really interesting to me is how vertical these verticals look, which is just glorious. The colors, the rendition. This almost looks like a render. This almost looks like something that's come out of AI, but it's not. This is a photograph, as we can see, shot just after sunset. And finally, a lot of people want to see birds, and here is a bird on the move. 1/640th 6.3 ISO 64 handheld. The bottom line with this lens is it's an outstanding photographic tool, and you can capture everything that you've seen in this video, and yet it's not much bigger than a 70-200. Epic.